When you talk about a special edition of Hold My Cutter, this is a first inside the trainer's room at LECOM, the former, I guess this is the McKechnie Field Clubhouse at LECOM. Because we're in the trainer's room, the doctor tells us we can't smoke any Rockies, at least here. We'll go outside and do it. It's Hold My Cutter. We do have baseballs all over the place, but the great Dr. Pat DeMeo is with us, who heads the orthopedic surgery department at Allegheny Health Network, a longtime medical director for the Pirates going back to like 2002. His stories are unbelievable. This is where it all happens, Doc.
Yes.
Many stories.
This is where we wish some things didn't happen.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll bring you good juju.
Right.
Well, I want to talk to Pat DeMeo about your story. We love talking, Pat, about how people have gotten to where Hold My Cutter is about baseball, the Pirates, sports, Pittsburgh, and how people got to where they are today. Your story, when you think about being a medical director, guy that's in charge of all the stuff, all the medicine, essentially, the medical stuff with the Pittsburgh Pirates, a major league sports franchise, when you're growing up and your accent is still very evident in New York, you couldn't have dreamed about being this.
No. I mean, obviously, I was, growing up in the 60s, there wasn't a little boy in America didn't want to be a baseball player, right? And so, it was America's pastime. It was the biggest thing ever. I mean, we all played Little League, Pony League, and all that other stuff. So, to even think, someday I would be able to mingle with Major League Baseball players, I had never even thought
Yankees,
of that.
Mets, obviously.
Well,
Yankees.
I grew up. So my dad was an old New York Giant fan. And he pretty much stayed a Giant fan. So, through the Willie Mays days and those guys, the Willie McCoveys and whatnot. And then I grew up, I don't know. I mean, I just, when I was little, the Yankees were pretty bad, right? They were in last place all the time. But I was just a Yankee fan, I think mainly because of Mickey Mantle.
Okay.
Right. And, I caught the tail end of his career. And so, and I maybe just because of all the tradition and history that was there with the team. So yeah, we used to watch, the Yankee games on WPXI. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
In New York, Channel 11. And then, as my career progressed, I mean, I think people asked me, how did I get to where I'm at? And there was really no plan, right? It wasn't like I said, hey, I have this diabolical plan and I'm going to plan this. I mean, once I decided to go to medical school, I wasn't really sure what kind of doctor I would be until I had enough exposure and experience, and I knew I wanted to be a surgeon. And then I narrowed it down to orthopedics. And once I got into orthopedics, I decided that, sports medicine was my passion, and that, and then one thing led to another. And I think I was very, very fortunate in my career to have some really big mentors. And especially at the Cleveland Clinic, my mentor was Dr. John Bergfeld, and he was one of the most respected sports medicine physicians in the country. And that kind of was the springboard to kind of like the box you check to say, okay, can you do a professional team, right? Because you had that exposure.
Did he make you aware that was a possibility?
You just knew that if you got into that program.
How do you get a break to become this for a sports franchise? By the way, what happens?
Well, I think you have to have your boxes checked, right? You have to have all your credentials in line, which obviously I did, and then there has to be some faith to it, right? You have to be in the right place at the right time, and there has to be a need. And there's only 30 major league teams, right? How do you get to be a player? There has to be, how many great players did you come up with in high school, college, minor league baseball that you would think, man, this guy's going to be a great major leaguer, but there was never that window, right? Yeah. They got shut out because there wasn't the opportunity. The same thing with us, right? There was just that window for me. I was in the right place at the right time. Kevin McClatchy believed in me, and he stuck with me. And David, Cam Bonifay, and then David were really instrumental early in my career. And I will tell you this, you don't learn how to be a Major League Baseball team doctor in medical school or residency, right? Right. because this is a very insular world.
Yeah.
Right. There's only so many Major League Baseball players.
No way to practice this.
Right. And so, and never having played the game at this level, right? For me, those first 4 or 5 years was a very big learning curve. And learning not just the medical side of the game, but the game of the game within the game, and what these guys are feeling, what the stress is like, the pressure that they're under constantly. I mean, those are things that, people on the outside don't see, right? And so you have to learn how to understand what they're going through, understand what their problems are. It's not just, oh, does your shoulder hurt or your elbow hurt or what's the MRI show? There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And the baseball side of it, Brownie, I didn't know baseball like you guys know it.
You played in high school.
I played.
Okay, yeah, I know.
I wasn't even going to go to the next level, right? But that's not what professional baseball is. A whole different animal,
whole different animal.
Right? And so learning that part of it, having David Littlefield and Brian Graham, those guys teach me the game. And understanding, and there's kind of like a rhythm to the season, right? And understanding that, because
that's a great point, man. Steve Blass always talked about that. The 3 phases, like spring training,
So
the
true.
excitement of getting to the ballpark for spring training, and then the excitement of playing. But then in the middle, there's this lull, the down, and then it revs back up at the very end.
And the rhythm for us is, right now everything's ramped up spring training, right? We're going to get physicals done, so. Major League camp's going to break tomorrow. That's great. But you know what? I got the minor leagues coming in.
Yeah.
Right? So now I have to be 2 places at one time.
Yeah.
Right. And answering phone calls all day long, right? Between both places. And the minor leagues is a lot of work. There's a lot of players, right? And then a lot of coaches too.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and then once spring training kind of gets settled and the minor leagues are playing their games, things kind of calm down a little bit. And then it's kind of, now they're setting rosters. Right. And how that trickle down effect goes throughout the entire organization, and who's going to be the 27th guy, who's going to be the 26th guy, who's going to be the 25th guy, who's going to be the 12th pitcher, right? All those things that are being decided in the next few weeks. That last week, sometimes, they'll ask questions of me, do I think this person can play or pitch back-to-back games? Do I think, how many games do you think he can, play, Do you think this person's going to play 90 games, 100 games? What do you think? And those are just guesstimates, right? But at the end of the day, you kind of get used to it over the years, understanding what it all entails. I don't think I could answer those questions in my first 2 years.
Right. You have to build that up.
Yeah.
You got to get that.
Did you even know what they were really asking your first 2 years?
Not really.
Yeah. I'm sure. Because, they don't speak your language. You don't speak their language.
But
You're
David made
pretty
it
fresh
easy
out
for
of
me.
it.
Littlefield?
Yeah, Littlefield really he understood. And he understood how to break it down real easy. And Brian Graham was there then too. And they
director.
They taught me how to I used to sit with them during the games and listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I picked
and hear the language.
Yeah. And so then the season starts, right? So this excitement of opening day, and like kind of April and May, you kind of gliding a little bit, but then all of a sudden you start thinking, okay, here comes the June draft, right?
Oh,
and man. I have to go through a lot of work for that, right? So there's going through all those medical records. Which is easier now than it might have been a generation ago because of the electronic medical record. But back then, if you ever walked into my office at PNC, you just see 5 feet worth of paper, right? And I would go through all those charts, and I came up with a grading scheme that I would give, that's still in use today, that I would give the general manager.
Now.
Well, like a perfect score would mean that you had no injuries, right? The next category would be that you had, say, maybe a non-baseball specific injury. So anybody that's playing a sport, if you hurt your knee, hurt your ankle, either whether it was surgery or not, but it's not baseball specific. It's just kind of a general orthopedic athletic injury. But then you start to get to baseball specific injuries, the shoulder, the elbow. Okay. And then that's a different grading scheme. And so you got to knock people down for that a little bit. But at the same time, if they've come back from that and demonstrated that they can be successful, you don't want to penalize them either. Right. And I think over the last generation, teams are now drafting guys who haven't had their surgery yet, but they know they need it.
Yeah.
Which a decade ago that would have never happened, right? So I think that goes to show.
We did that with Hunter Barco, right?
Yeah.
Explain that now.
So Hunter Barco's at Florida. He is maybe a huge still in the draft. It's looking better and better each and every year, but he's at Florida, probably going to be a top 10 pick, but nobody takes him. Nobody kind of puts their hand on him. We did. We get him in, and we get to do that rehab. And I think that's a huge benefit.
Absolutely.
And it's a bet on our medical staff, and we have a great
So in
medical
other words,
staff.
you can draft guys now who've had surgeries.
Yeah,
Maybe
we
Tommy
got
John.
or even before their Tommy John.
Yeah,
They're,
even
they're
before.
drafting guys that say, let's say you're an elite college pitcher and you get hurt in May, right? And you need Tommy John surgery. Well, if they had you pegged as a first rounder, they're going to take you still, thinking that,
they may drop you a little bit.
but there's a 90% chance you're going to make it back from that surgery, right? So that didn't exist a decade ago. I mean, the
crazy.
numbers have we've continued to get better and better at the surgical side.
That is
of it.
crazy
Yeah.
to think that you would stay completely away from a Tommy John
Right.
guy, and now say, heck with it. We'll
Right.
rehab him. We
'Cause
know
there's-
what we're doing.
But there's a track record there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then right after the June draft comes what? Trading deadline.
yeah.
And that's another
Boom,
crazy
boom.
period, because for every one thing the media may hear about, there's 100 things that we're doing, right? You know, like
Yeah.
You're constantly researching guys' medical
right,
records.
Yeah, they're constant. The general manager.
So are you constantly passing medical records to different teams throughout,
Absolutely.
and you're giving
right?
some
Yeah.
players, you're getting some
But
players.
it's much easier now because it's electronic.
You have the portal now,
Yeah,
but what
yeah.
did you do back in the day? Did you have to mail it?
Well,
Scan it?
yeah,
Telephone
scanned it,
calls?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
one paper, two
Yeah,
paper. That's
right.
nuts.
But I mean, I'm not going to say there have never been times where we have been duped by other teams
I'm sure.
by withholding medical information, which is much harder to do now because of electronic records.
Ah,
Yeah, they give us the access as
Yeah,
players
and,
now.
You know, we got
Oh, wow.
we got some players like a guy by the name
Wow.
of Freddie Sanchez. You know,
uh-huh.
we got
Oh
him
yeah.
because you know there was some shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
That would take
Freddie,
place.
you end up with Freddie Sanchez because of that.
Right. They had to undo the trade.
Uh-huh.
They didn't divulge to us something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so, but you know, they gave us a National League batting championship.
Turned out to be great for the
Yeah, that's
Pirates.
right, exactly.
Actually, it turned out probably better because if you look at the other players involved, and it's out there, it's a public thing.
Right.
But if you look at the players that would have been involved, the Pirates turned out a
It
way
did,
better trade for the Pirates.
It did. And so then that trading deadline happens, and then it's kind of okay. Then the season kind of goes on autopilot for a little bit, except with just injuries. And then, as you know, as you start to get into late August and the September call up, things start to get hectic again. And then you're trying to get everybody, you know, in September to make sure that as the season's ending, you're making sure you're dotting all your I's and crossing your T's, and guys are going to get the correct diagnostic procedures they need before they go home and things like that. Because you don't want to have those loose ends. And then, you know, when people go home, you know what it's like in the off season. You just
It gets crazy.
you gotta get away from this
Yep.
game, right? And they decompress, and I think that's really, really important because, you know, I don't think the public really understands. I don't think I could really even appreciate it, even though I see it. You know, 162 games.
It's
I
unbelievable.
mean, forget about the physical toll, the mental toll, right? How do you get yourself mentally prepared? 162 games a year, right?
But not including spring training.
Right, and then we forget about these 30, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
These don't
exactly.
count.
We don't talk about these 30 at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
So you played all the sports. Explain that from a doctor's orthopedic guy's standpoint about the difference between baseball and these other sports, because there's a mentality sometimes in Western PA. It's they call it a football town, and that these guys aren't tough enough. It's not hockey, but talk about that grind,
Well, I
the
mean,
mental
look,
and
I would
physical
say this to
grind.
anybody: you can walk into the Steelers locker room, you can walk in the Pirate locker room. An athlete's an athlete.
Yeah, that's a good
these
call.
guys are pretty big too. They're
Yeah.
just not wearing. They're not
not wearing
shoulder
pads.
pads.
Yeah.
Right? But they're not tiny little
And
guys.
they're built to rotate,
right.
which is different.
And I think in football you see more acute traumatic type injuries. In baseball you can see more attritional type injuries. Right. So you know the wear and tear of throwing thousands of baseball over the course of the year. You know the wear and tear on your back from rotating your hips from the rotation of swinging bat. You know thousands and thousands of swings. You know during the course of the season. So yeah, I think that it's much different types of injuries. But it's not that acute thing like, oh, he blew his knee out. And every once in a while you do see that, right? But it's rare. I mean, you see, O'Neal Cruz break an ankle or Jung Ho.
Jung Ho Gang,
Yeah,
the
you know,
knee,
Yeah, Polanco.
that-
the other one.
Gregory Polanco.
But I'll tell you what, Jung Ho's was the worst baseball injury I've ever seen in my life.
What?
But
Worse than the Kendall injury?
Yeah.
No, wait a second.
Yeah.
The Kendall injury, of course, we
It was
saw.
an ankle dislocation, but he didn't break anything. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was just soft tissue. And you know, obviously it was open, so you had to worry about infection, but he did really well with that. right? And there really wasn't a whole lot to fix, right? The knee injury to John was I've never seen. I mean, that's worse than football. The injury I've seen.
Get out!
No, his entire cartilage was displaced about 1.5 centimeters.
What?
Just think about if somebody took a piston and just drove it through his knee. And so we had to not only reconstruct all the ligaments, but we had to tunnel up underneath the knee and push that cartilage back up from the bottom.
Where did it go?
It
drove into
like a die punch.
What?
It's just like this. I'll show you the X-rays. I've never seen anything like that. And I will tell you what's amazing. And first of all, you're only as good as the weakest member of your team in anything that you do in life, whether it's sports or what I do as the chairman of the department. I have a great team. I have great partners, great colleagues. If I pick up that phone, they're going to be there at a moment's notice, and they're going to give me their A game. So I had my colleagues like Greg Altman come in and help me with that surgery. It was, but honestly, did I think he was going to come back from that? I had to put it probably 80-20, no way he's ever coming back
No
to play
kidding.
professional sports. So that's a testament to him too, though, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you could do the best surgery in the world, but somebody has to have the mental makeup.
You got to get through that rehab.
Right. And they got to say, hey, I can do this, right? So
Yeah.
I give the kid a lot of credit. I mean, for what he went through, that was pretty tough. Wow. So, and then the day Ryan Vogelsong got hit in the eye with that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh my God, I'm an orthopedist. What do I know about eyes? Right? I'm like, holy man, I've never seen anything like this. But thank God he gets to the ER at AGH 2 blocks away. The ophthalmological traumatological surgeon was in the OR 1 floor below, met him up in the ER as he arrived.
Oh my gosh.
And so, to have that level of support from your colleagues, not just in the Department of Orthopedics, but from the entire enterprise, you pick up the phone, they're going to be there for you. That really matters.
I didn't realize that injury of Jung Ho Kang's was so late in the season. September 18th, 2015, against the Cubs, PNC Park, takeout slide by Chris Coughlin of the Chicago Cubs. Pirate fans will remember, and they'll hold a grudge forever, I'm sure. The manager of the Chicago Cubs.
I can't believe that statement.
Joe Madden kind of kiddingly said something about plantar fasciitis.
That was disingenuous.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
The guy had a traumatic
knee
injury that was obvious to everybody in the stadium, and you're going to call it plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
Really.
Wow. Did not know that.
So
and very unprofessional, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can
respect your opponent, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So that happens in September. He's done for the. Who knows what impact that has the rest of the way on the Pirates? They end up going to the postseason 1-game playoff and lose it. But then you mentioned Ryan Vogelsong, the pitcher's at the plate, gets hit in the eye. Go back to the July 4th.
Well, can I tell you?
No, please. Heck yeah.
Please.
So AJ, right? This is AJ's first spring training, right?
Yeah.
And he's just a character. I love him.
Yeah.
Okay. But I didn't know him that well. And his first
spring training, he's bunting
and he gets an orbital fracture, right?
I'll never forget. Yep.
So now we're on the plane together going home, right? Not planned, right? So
you're escorting him back.
I'm not really escorting. I'm going back because I have to operate myself.
Okay.
And so I just put minor league. I just finished the major league physicals, and I was going home for a week, and then I was going to come back for minor league physicals.
Okay.
And so AJ was on the plane because he had to have surgery, and our surgeon was Randy Beatty, same one that took care of Ryan. And so Randy, the next morning, I'm in the OR and I'm operating in the same space as Randy, right? So I have 2 rooms running here. Randy has 1 room here. And so, during the surgery, I check in and say, how's it going? So that's great. It's going to be no problem. We'll fix it up. No big deal. So now I'm in the recovery room.
That's unbelievable. Like during the surgery.
No big deal.
That's so good.
No big deal.
So, but wait.
That's some inside baseball
stuff.
stuff.
It gets really better. So now I'm in the recovery room and AJ's awake and his wife is sitting next to him and he's got the patch on his eye. And I just went up to him and I said, hey, AJ, I just want to let you know, everything went perfect. You did great. And he opens his good eye and he looks at me and says, don't you have some shoulder surgeries to do? So AJ. Right?
That's so great.
So AJ.
That is so great.
Go do some surgery.
Yeah, go get yourself done.
Get out of here.
It's so good.
Oh my gosh. So great.
awesome.
Yeah. And, I have so many favorites over the years. It's hard to distinguish them, but guys that, really respect, Kevin Young's, Jason Kendall's, Brian Giles, guys that play hard, guys that, they just.
Now, you this is maybe a silly question, maybe not, but do you develop relationships more so through injuries, correct?
Yes and no. I mean, I would tell you this, and you would appreciate this. As a physician, I mean, you don't really become a physician unless you actually are empathetic and care about your patient.
100%.
Right?
And you do a great job of that.
But if you don't, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
The hardest thing for me to learn in professional baseball was the here today, gone tomorrow. Right? Because now we become friends. I know your wife's name. I know your kid's name. You know, I mean, I may not socialize with you, but I mean, I know you well enough to know you personally and have a relationship with you. And then part of the game is you're here today, gone tomorrow. And I guess if you're in the game, you understand that mentality because you've done it your whole life to get here. And so you accept it. But for us as physicians, it was very hard for me to get used to that. Because there's so many people I cared about, and I still do, right? And they just go move on to other organizations or other clubs, or they retire and, you know, they have good lives. And, you know, but you're so used to seeing somebody all the time and being friendly with them, and they're just gone.
And you can't just turn that off.
No.
You're going to develop relationships, right?
And so you still to this day, when you run into somebody like 2 years ago at the stadium, the bullpen coach for Arizona, Mike Fetters. Mike Fetters.
Oh, Fetters, my gosh.
I haven't seen Mike Fetters since he left this clubhouse over 20 years ago, but I walked across the field, I saw him and gave him a big hug.
Oh, my gosh.
That's got to mean something.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, wow, geez, I'm happy you're doing
You don't realize what, the impact that you make on guys that,
Well, speaking of that, I mean, you get the image, you get the MRI, and you have to go in and deliver the news. And you did that with me. And I'll never forget it. How empathetic you were and how you presented it. Obviously, I have 5 knee surgeries under my belt, but I'll never forget. You gave me options. You gave me a way to think about it. And we both kind of said, like, you're going into something that's going into arbitration. There's a good chance I wasn't coming back, but you laid it all out. Obviously, this wasn't year 2, 3, 4 for you. You'd been in it, but your baseball knowledge and the way you presented it put me at ease. I don't even think my wife was there at the moment.
Well, now, Ford, can you slow that down? Because we need to tell us exactly what happened.
I'm in Miami. I have my first 4-hit game, and I go to break up a double play.
What year?
This is 2013.
Okay.
I just get hot.
Okay.
I struggled most of the year. April had a good month. Then May and June, I really didn't play well. Probably put too much pressure on myself. Got hot in a week in July. Russell Martin was kind of banged up, so I was getting to play a little bit more. Slide in that base, and my knee just sticks. Ended up finishing the game. We won the game. I take a lot of pride into finishing that game because Russell was hurt too. And he was sitting on the sidelines with his entire gear on. I'll never forget. I was like, dude, you can take that off. You're not coming in. He's like, you can't
Despite
walk.
your injury, you're going to.
I was like, I'm
even
finishing.
Though you can't walk.
So I knew something was bad.
You know, seriously injured. Yeah.
Yep. And then I hobbled to the plane the next day, or I hobbled through and actually passed all the tests because Doc wasn't there. So I passed all my tests with their doctors there. They're like, oh, we think he's good. Stay on the roster. And then the next day, end up having an image. My knee's this big, and my meniscus is torn in half, and it's stuck underneath my patella.
Okay, but you didn't know what was going on. So you go back to that conversation with Pat DeMeo now.
And then as soon as I get back, straight to images, and I'm waiting in the room. I think my wife's out of town. She's flying in, and it's just me and him.
Mm-hmm.
And he lays it out, and not because he has a whiteboard, but his brain has a whiteboard, and he's laying out options for me. Like, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. He's like, I do think you can repair it. It's going to take time. And he just gave me a list of options and, gave me decisions.
And I try to do that. I think
not everybody does that. That's the whole thing.
But I think one of the things that experience has taught me, right, is that I don't necessarily know what that player's thinking.
Exactly.
I don't have an idea. Like,
kind of how
where is he arbitration eligible? Is he free agent? What's the roster makeup? What has the manager said to him about his future? I mean, you don't know any of that, right?
But he talked to me like he did.
But I tried to put myself in the player's position and say, look, I'm not going to come here and just tell you what to do. I'm going to lay this out for you. There's different scenarios here. And then I can help you make the best decision for you, right? Because you understand exactly where you're at in this whole Major League Odyssey, right? That you as a physician don't really understand. And I think that's what really sets you apart as a sports medicine physician, right? You have to understand the psyche of the athlete, right? Like, what are they thinking? Where how can you help them be successful, right? Without being authoritarian, right? And so I think if you have that trust and that rapport with your athletes, I think that you'll have much better outcomes. Look, if you want to ask me, what and I don't know if I really should even say this, but I'm gonna.
No.
At the end of the day, the generational changes that have occurred, there's so much interference today by the agents,
100%.
where they're dictating where they want the medical care to be delivered, and yet they're not experts, right? Nor do they care about the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? Like, I'm here, I care about this team, right? This is my team.
But he also made you feel like he cared about you too.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I care about the organization,
but you also cared about the players.
Yes, of course.
And there is a separation
I've never,
times.
ever. I don't represent management. I represent the players.
And you could feel that,
right?
And I think that's something that
people ask me that. Like, do you ever feel pressure from management? The answer is no, because I'd never let them. But I'm gonna do what's right for the player. But having said that, I have seen several times in my career really good players go to outside facilities and have bad outcomes that have quite honestly ended their careers. Right. Wow. And I'm not going to say those names out loud, but I mean, it's disheartening because these athletes were trusting their agents who they thought had their best interests at heart. They send them to this place, and you're wondering what's this guy thinking, and I can't really stop them. Right? It's what their choice is, right? I mean, I've had I try to counsel them, but and so they put their blind faith in somebody that they don't know, and then it costs them a career, and it's sad to see that happen. Right, really sad.
My gosh, that's got to be
another great thing he did for me is you got me into, I don't know if it was a medical study with you and Dr. Andrews with stem cells,
right?
And I still believe, and I ended up having a stem cell on my other knee, and both knees have been great. I haven't torn knock.
And you know what? Let me tell you something about Dr.
But he's always on the cutting edge, and he brought that.
That's
was very interested.
You got to be up to speed on all this.
Yeah, but like you're putting your name with Dr. Andrews. You guys are collaborating. They get that done, and he just.
But I was so fortunate to have Dr. Andrews in my career as an ally, and not only an ally but a mentor.
He didn't have to tell me that, by the way.
Right.
You never had to tell me that, but he was always transparent, and that speaks volumes to this man's character.
And so, Dr. Andrews, look, there will never be a Dr. Andrews equal in the history of Major League Baseball, and what his contributions to this game have been. I mean, I think he should be like in the medical wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Such a thing ever created, because what he did was he saved so many countless careers by not only performing cutting-edge surgery, but studying the results of those surgeries and learning from those results and improving those results. So it's not just saying, okay, I'm going to do this, and that, right? It's improving that over time and being able to measure that, right? And I think the other thing that Dr. Andrews has done really big is prophylaxis, right? How do we cut down on these injuries? Why are we seeing so many of these injuries? And it's multifactorial. I don't know that I have the answers to that. I certainly think we're putting more torque on arms today than we did. Okay. Guys are throwing harder, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're spinning harder. I mean, it's going to affect us, right? But is there something that, we can do early? I think if you look back 15, 20 years ago, Dr. Andrews did a lot of studies on youth baseball to help, cut those numbers down so that, I can't tell you how many kids I've seen over the years. And I said, look, it's not important how good you are at 16, it's how good you are at 26.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And if there's one thing I did learn from the players, from people like you, is if you sat in the locker room with most of them and you said, Greg, hey, were you the best player in Little League? Were you the best player in your high school? Most of them are going to tell you no. And you're going to look at them and say, well, you made it to the major leagues.
Yeah, right.
How about the other guys? So, well, the difference is every year I just got a little bit better. Every year I just got a little bit better. So it's important to tell people you might not be. Look, my son PJ played baseball in high school with David Bednar. Did I think he was going to be an all-star Pittsburgh Pirate back then? Of course not. Right. But God bless him. Every year he just got better.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So tons of stories like that.
Now, you talk about the relationship you have with, Michael McHenry points out here's one instance where you're going through these scenarios and telling each player, these are your options. And that's what you do. You've got to have great table manners, and you talk about you represent the player, but you talked about the different factions. You've got a player, you've got an organization, you've got Allegheny Health Network, you've got agent, you've got it all.
Don't forget Mama, the wife.
Oh my gosh, I did. I just.
But it's because most of the time, and then
Mama
that's
and
the
the
last
family.
thing.
So,
Yep.
so how do you juggle all that?
Well, it's kind of interesting you asked me that, because obviously I'm in charge of a big residency program, fellowship programs. So there's a lot of teaching involved. And when I tell the fellows every
He
year,
does everything.
when I talk to the fellows every year, I say, listen, I want you to have your own high school team. Okay. It's important to learn how to have confidence to manage a team, right? The first time you're out there, you're scared. Am I going to make the wrong decision? I'm going to send this kid back in. Should I hold him out? I mean, you're nervous, right?
Yeah.
There's no cookbook on what's right. I mean, you have to have some experience with it, right? And you have to, you have to understand your job is to prevent catastrophic injury, right? To harm to the athlete. I said, when you're in high school, you're going to talk to the player, the parent, and the coach. Okay. When you come to a professional team, you're talking to the player, the player's family, the player's agent, your general manager, your manager, their coaches.
Boy, oh boy.
It just goes on down the list. So it's the same. It's the same discussion. You just amplify it. Okay.
I mean, I can't imagine having to do all, and you almost have to be a politician to a degree, don't you?
No, I mean, you just have to. You have to make it simple enough that they can understand.
But you have to talk to each one different,
Right.
because you have to have more empathy with the family than you do with the organization,
Yeah.
because they want it cut and dry.
Right. I mean, the first thing the organization says, well, when can he play?
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first
Because
thing.
they have to make a move, and that's not insensitive.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell people all the time, the greatest gift I got was when I got hurt in college. My college coach, very hard nosed. He's the snake, God rest his soul. But he said to me, he goes, "You don't exist." And I go, "What?" He goes, "You don't exist until I can see you physically go back on the field." Every day he would walk by the trainer. Is he ready? And that's it. But he wouldn't say my name. It really was like I didn't exist. But that put a different mindset in my mind that if I'm hurt, and I can't play. But if I can play, I'm going to go play, because he got me back on the field faster than probably any human, because he made me think I could do things I couldn't. But also, I didn't feel like I existed, so I worked twice as hard.
It brings up an interesting point, Mike. I mean, you're a professional athlete. You played at the highest levels, throughout your career. I have been asked so many times by people, and I'm not a baseball expert. I am not a baseball coach. I'm not a baseball.
But you're a baseball lifer.
I'm a doctor, okay? And I know what I know, and more importantly, what I don't know. Okay, but I think people have always asked, if you have a son, he's a really good baseball player, and he has a chance to get drafted high, would you send him to college or would you send him to the pro game? And I think my answer today would be different than what it was a decade ago, because I think that the pressure to win in college is greater than it is in professional sports.
100%.
Really?
And because at the minor league level, it's all about development, right? And everything you do is being monitored. How you eat, how you work out, how you train. You have professional strength and conditioning coaches, professional athletic trainers, professional physical therapists, professional nutrition, right? So you are getting a professional environment in terms of your development. Colleges don't have that type of resources to do those things, number one. And number two, the college coach, if he doesn't win, he's fired, right?
Yeah.
He's not there to
Especially
develop you.
Yeah, that's true.
You're there to pay his mortgage.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
So true.
So maybe at the major league level, it's different.
Yeah.
Right? Certainly the pressure here to win is enormous. But the minor leagues is about developing talent to get to the major leagues. College is not necessarily so. Okay, so I think
Well said.
You'll get better training in a professional environment than you would in a college environment, just because the universities don't have that kind of resource to put to baseball, because it's a non-revenue sport.
Pat, how about going through all these situations when a guy might be hurt, not sure, that kind of thing, and the dance to work with management, the player, but now the media is involved too, and fans.
Well, I always
How hard is that?
To me, it's pretty simple. If you live in the media, you die in the media.
Huh.
And I kind of have a.
But you have to keep things under wraps.
Yeah. Well, I think I have a professional relationship with most of the writers.
Yeah.
And I tell them point blank, look, there's HIPAA rules. Okay? I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not going to violate somebody's.
Yeah, that makes
I'll
it
let
easy, doesn't it? Yeah.
And look, there are times when players say things to the media that may not be completely true.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then, and I have to just sit there and say, well, it's
Do you
not
think
my
that's
place.
because they don't know, or
You're talking about the
Or-
I think they want to,
or push the envelope?
push
Yeah.
the envelope,
No,
maybe
explain
across
that.
too.
What do you mean?
Right.
So maybe there's a divide, whether it's between the agent and the organization or the player and the organization, and they say something.
Could also be performance based.
It could be performance based,
Right.
Okay.
And
where
so-
they see it a different way.
Right. And so, look, and I said, look, my job, that's why we have this great PR team,
Mhm.
right? That's what they do. They stick to PR. That's not part of my job,
Mhm.
right? And what the Pirates release is what they release. Sometimes they'll ask me to look at it, right? And that's fine, just to make sure there's no, nothing that's incorrect in that statement. But I'm
Interesting.
never going to get up and talk about a player's health publicly. That's just not what I should do.
How about the difference between a player that is hurting, but is not necessarily hurt? Like you can play through this.
They all are.
Amen.
By 130 games, they all are.
But isn't there a difference though?
Well,
you can go ahead and play
I
through
think
this.
the way I would phrase that is performance based. Okay, I look at a player and say, the most important. I know you may be hurting, but is this impacting your performance? Because if it is, then you're hurting your career, and I need to help you. Okay, if you can still play with this and not impact your performance, well then okay.
Well, that's
Right.
hard.
Right, exactly.
Very hard. I
Right.
played all year,
Right.
15 hurt,
Yeah.
and I wish I had DeMeo.
Right. I mean, but you have to, you're helping the athlete because you understand the situation he's in, right? I mean, look, too, don't forget the other side of this. I mean, the people, like the public sometimes gets awed by the size of the contracts and the monies and this and that. These, do you understand how hard it is to leave your family in the beginning of February and live out of a suitcase in a locker to at least mid-October? You're never sleeping in your own bed. You very rarely sometimes can't see your family, especially if your kids are at school. Okay. You're constantly traveling. You're on the road. You're going from place to place to place. The public puts so much demands on your time. I mean, I once said to somebody, could you imagine if somebody came up to me right when I'm scrubbing my hands to go into the OR and asked me for like my autograph?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second.
That would be a great.
Yeah.
Shoot, I think we got a commercial
I got-
there.
That's a good commercial.
That's
I
great.
got my game face.
That would be
on.
hilarious.
And I try to explain to people, do you understand? Before a game, these guys are mentally preparing, right? Because their livelihoods are at stake,
Yeah.
right? This isn't easy,
Yeah.
right? And if there's one thing I've learned from most of the major league players, and it's funny, if you ask, like, of course they're going to say, well, making the major leagues was easy. Staying in the major leagues is hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
right. Well, for a guy like me, it wouldn't have been easy to make. The
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
couldn't-
easy to get there. I don't
couldn't
care
get
who
the
you
first
are.
part of that statement.
Yeah.
Right. But no, realistically, I mean, and so people, I think the fans, I wish sometimes had a little more respect just for what, he didn't sign my baseball. Well, he's getting ready for a game.
Yeah.
Right. And I think for an athlete, that's really got to be hard because there's a fine line, right? You want to be everything to everybody all the time, but yet you have to have a little area where you have sanity for yourself, right? Someplace where you can go hide and just say, I need to decompress.
Mhm.
And that's where the veterans come in, right? The veterans help you with that.
Mhm.
1,000%.
It's funny because I watch you and how you interact with people, even outside outside this, in your ballpark, in your offices, as you're approaching surgery. You are. It's really fascinating to watch because it's like he's an athlete, a professional athlete,
Agreed.
and his focus and how he demands respect, and he gets respect, but he demands respect, and people fall in line. And when you are there at Pat DeMeo's office, and he's walking around, it's almost. This is maybe a bad analogy, Barry Bonds like, but I mean, in terms of, I mean this in terms, and people that are in his field know how great he is at what he does. And so they know that. And it's a fascinating thing to watch. But that's what you have to be. You have to be able to separate. And you talk about a fan asking for your autograph, but you do. There are times when, you have time with people. Also
true
times when, man, I'm heading to surgery and this is it. I'm laser focused.
Well, because I made a commitment to that person.
Right.
Well, but you do a good job. It's almost, I say some guys put on a cape. They're two different people.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's kind of what you do. When you put on that white jacket, you're a different dude.
That's exactly right.
You get like this.
Yes.
But then you take it off. You walk into a room. Like there's no doubt in my mind. I think you were doing surgery the day you came and saw me. But then you're empathetic.
Yeah.
I have my wife there.
You're able to do that.
Yeah,
You're able
you turn on the switch. It's crazy.
Compartmentalize. It's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah, and again,
so true.
I think having such a deep respect and appreciation for what it takes to do this at this level helps you with that, right? I mean, because
and that didn't come at easy. Like that took time to see.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember the first year I was here. I'm standing out here on the foul pole, and Ken Griffey's 15 feet away. I'm like, wow, this Ken Griffey.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
One of the greatest players of of my generation. I'm like, wow, whoever thought I'd be 15 feet away from Ken Griffey?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, those are kind of moments that are ever emblazoned in my brain. That were special things for me because I appreciate the game, and I always did. And look, there's 30 teams, there's 30 medical directors, right? Did I ever think I'd get here? I didn't know. I never thought about it that way, right? But when the opportunity came, I know I wanted to do it.
Do you have a greatest? We ask players and people in the business their greatest. If it's broadcaster, if it's a writer, your greatest article, your greatest call, players, your first home run, the greatest moment in your career. Do you have a great moment when it comes to your time with the Pirates? Like, because I'm thinking about Kendall. And his return.
But there's so many people.
It's hard to point to one.
I'm sure watching the guy's return have to be special.
Yeah, you must love that.
Jason Bay was special. Jason Kendall was special. I mean, there's just so many.
Jung Ho, we just talking about Jung Ho Gang.
Freddie Sanchez.
The fact he came back on the field, right?
I mean, AJ was a riot. Okay, right. I mean, I'll tell you what. I've never seen. You maybe be able to answer this more than me. How important is team chemistry, right? Some people say, well, it's really important. But other people say, no, it's about team talent. Right? I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But I've never seen a locker room change so fast the minute AJ Burnett walked through that door.
That's interesting.
Right?
That is interesting.
I cannot agree more.
Right? Really?
I mean, he had that moxie that I'm not afraid to pitch to anybody. I'm not afraid to play against anybody. I'm going to make you guys believe that too.
Wow.
Right?
I use the word identity a lot, and Brownie doesn't necessarily love it. And I think I can explain it the best based around him. He brought in an identity for our team.
Right.
And it goes to his shirt. Sit the F down, right?
Yeah. Now, again, our debate has been this, Pat, that AJ did change the club when his presence. But if AJ Burnett falls on his face when he goes to that mound, you can throw that out the window.
I agree. You got it.
You can go ahead and be as cocky as you want to be.
When you talk about chemistry, it takes a village. Yeah. He was just a leader. We needed a Pirate, and we got a Pirate. And it's funny that he had a patch on his eye the first week he was a Pirate because the man was a Pirate.
Yeah.
He came out. The city fell in love with him because he was hard nosed from Arkansas, right? So he had that grittiness about him.
Fast cars too.
Huh?
Yeah.
And he took out
I raced him one time on the Parkway, man, in his Batmobile.
Yeah. I'm
driving my car. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was unapologetically him. And I think great teams have guys like that, but then they also have guys that, like Kutch was probably the face.
And you had to look at all the young talent you had coming up on that team. You had you had Andrew, you had Neil,
Josh Harrison,
Jordy, Josh.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, but I think AJ was able to give them direction.
Yes. Yeah. The leader.
And Russell Martin too. I mean, another.
He came in with the pedigree.
Yeah.
And I think that was important too. And he was here for 2 years. I don't think people talk about that enough. That 2-year deal, signing him here, you knew that guy wasn't just coming here to get a contract immediately. It's going to be 2 years probably, and we started winning immediately.
Right.
How about the day somebody came into AJ the day he was pitching? You know that story, of course. Into the into the clubhouse, and he's at his stall, and somebody unaware, walks up to us. You're parked in the garage in the wrong spot. AJ ripped him said, "I am pitching today."
Yeah.
And it was like,
Yeah, what spot was it?
I don't care if it's I don't care if it's the owner's spot.
I do remember that story.
Yeah.
And now to this day, now they've got a special spot for the starting pitcher.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I remember something about coffee too. But we'll
That's true. That is true.
But he learned all that from Doc Holliday, right? And when he was with
passing
him,
down that.
it goes back to the veteran things.
Right.
I think the only way you have the great talent at the bottom is you have to have veterans at the top to pour into. I mean, we're very lucky right now with Paul Skeens. I think he's already a veteran in the sense of the way he can pour into guys. But having that is so important. That's how you build that chemistry, because then you have a coaching staff, but you have an actual team that's really staffing themselves. The coaches are overseeing, and then they can really focus on how can we find extra wins, put them in the right spots, instead of trying to maybe navigate personalities and everything else. The team's doing that in its own right.
And I think too, to kind of answer your question a little more than I think about it. I mean, how special it was to be able to sit with Bill Mazeroski and Bill Burton and Steve Blass and John Candelaria. And, and before the games, those guys had that little smoking area where the public can't see them. And you just pull up a chair and you just listen to them. Right. And you just like, oh my God.
Soak it all in, right?
Right. Like, you know what? I mean, and they played against all the great ones. I mean, they played against the Willies, the Mickeys, the Henrys. That's priceless.
Oh.
I will tell you one funny story. I don't know if you ever heard this before. It was at the Pirates' 50th celebration of the 60 team, right? And we were all up at the stadium in one of those World Series boxes. And I had my wife with me, and a lot of the players were there. I'd say almost all of them that were still alive were there. I'm sitting at one of those little high top tables, and I'm sitting with Bill and Mylene and my wife. Okay. And I said, "Hey, Mylene, let me ask you a question. After Bill hit that home run, did you guys have like a big party somewhere? Did you like rent out a restaurant or something?" She scoffed at me. She said, "Patrick, you know Bill." I said, "Well, what did you do?" He said, "Well, I picked him up in the car. He pushed me over to the passenger seat. We drove to the top of Shenley Park. He turned the car off, turned the radio off, and we sat there for 2 hours in complete silence."
Incredible.
I said,
What?
Yeah.
I would have been dancing on the street.
Well, Maz talks about that. Everybody in Pittsburgh was partying,
Right.
except for me and my wife, Mylene.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
Just sat silent
Imagine that.
for 2 hours.
The
Just
hero
taking-
of the 60 World Series sat
the
in
most
Shenley
famous
Park
home run in the history of baseball.
in Oakland
Wow.
and just sat there with his wife in the car. Unbelievable
I know
story.
to this day, the Yankees still they moan about that.
Oh yeah, they
series
still don't like it.
because
Heck,
they
we'll go to spring training games. There you see people miserable about the Pirates.
because they outscored us, but we won 4 games.
Yeah,
They won
yeah.
great.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Got crushed in the other 3.
But when else have you seen a ninth inning walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth in Game 7? Never happened.
That was it.
Joe Carter did Game 6. It wasn't
Right,
Game
correct.
7.
Game 7, the only Game 7 to
It's all
walk
marbles,
on.
baby.
It's all the marbles.
Hey Pat, tell us about Ernie Withers.
Oh wow!
There was a year
I get
ago.
so embarrassed by this.
I was with you. I was talking. You were on the golf cart.
You were next to me, right? I practiced. If you remember,
You almost ran me over.
No, Bones was driving.
Bones was driving. That's
Right.
Scott Bonnet was
Oh, that
driving.
makes more sense.
And I'm leaning over and we're chatting, and all of a sudden, boom!
Right. So that practice didn't start till 11:30 that day, and I had taken my bike. I rode like 25 miles that morning, so my legs were dead tired. And Bones comes up in this golf cart. I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to sit down.
Yeah.
Equipment
I'm sitting down, and then Brownie's standing next to us, and we're just, I don't know what we were talking about. We're just talking, passing time. And all of a sudden, I hear Jeff Potobnik screaming my name. And I didn't see exactly what happened. And then Bones pulled out about 10 feet with the golf cart. I saw somebody down in center field. And, it took like 10 seconds to get there. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh, is this somebody that went Basil Bagel, right? It's a little hot that day.
Are you thinking of players down?
No, I knew it wasn't a player because it wasn't wearing a uniform.
Okay.
And but I didn't know who it was. And when I got there, well, he was pulseless. He wasn't breathing. His pupils were fixed and dilated. And I said, "This isn't vasovaggal," right? So
Again, this is on the field
so I
at
just said-
the Pirate City minor league complex
Wow.
one morning last spring
So
training.
I started CPR. I said, "Call 911, get the defibrillator, and go inside and get Dr. Franco." And I started doing CPR on him, probably within 30 seconds of him hitting the deck. And then one of our trainers, Matt, came over. He put the paddles on while I kept up the compressions. And then, you just hit the button. And, you know, if you're in my position, you've done CPR in the hospital many, many times. And the vast majority of times, you know, unfortunately, people don't survive.
Mm.
We hit the button. Next thing you know, I felt the pulse in his neck and his wrist.
God, it's unbelievable.
And
Jeez.
but he wasn't breathing. And so I said, get the embu bag. I was about to start bagging.
What's that? What does that mean?
A mask.
Okay.
To push
Okay.
push air in.
Okay.
And he took a big yawn,
Holy
opened his eyes, and said, "Where am I?"
No
Okay.
kid.
Yeah. And then I took my pulse.
Yeah. Like through the roof, huh?
Right.
Wait a
Yeah.
minute. Let me check
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, oh my
Said
God.
145.
Pat, can you explain that? What's the feeling like, man? Because you've been doing it,
Well-
as you said before.
Well, the first thing
Are you expecting this isn't going to work when you're doing it?
look,
What's going through
the
your
odds
mind?
of surviving VFib in the field are like 1 in 200.
Wow.
Yeah. Now with defibrillators, they're probably better now than they were. So I don't know what the exact statistics are today, but I will say this: you don't. It's like when you go into the batter's box. You're not thinking about what you're eating for
Because
dinner.
your adrenaline
Right.
like going like
Yeah.
crazy.
You're a professional. You're doing what you're trained to do.
Yeah.
I'm a surgeon. I'm trained to do this stuff.
Mm.
Right. It's reflex for me.
Right.
And so first thing I did was, okay, what's your name? How old are you? What medicines you are? Any allergies to any drugs? All this pertinent stuff I needed to know. Right. And then I just kept them calm. And I waited till the paramedics got there. So, and to this day, I mean, I will say this to you. I mean, I try not to make a big deal of this because I think I just did what I was supposed to do.
Mm.
Right. But it happened because it got a lot of attention because it was the day of the first full squad workout. So media was there, TV was there, radio was there, print was there. It was another day. Nobody's there.
By the way, we should explain that this guy was amongst a group from the Chamber of Commerce who were shagging. They have guests shagging fly balls,
Yeah.
and he was happened to be out there. So I'm
Right.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he was president of the Chamber of Commerce
Okay.
for Manatee County.
Mm.
And so, yes, and he had all the local politicians and stuff were there. So, I mean, I think that it just, if it happened in the middle of Publix, nobody knows,
Yeah.
right? It was just, and I would do the same thing if it was in the middle of Publix, right? I mean, it just was happened that they were all there that day. I will say this, though. You did tell me to go talk to the meeting. I'm like, there's no way. And he said, why not? And I said, well, he got to the hospital. I'm not sure what happened to him after he got to the hospital.
Good point.
Okay.
Good point.
I'm not going to start saying, hey, I saved this guy's life. Unless
Let's
I know
wait.
he's really alive.
Yeah. The handoff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
True.
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's make sure. Yeah. That's
Important
good.
point.
That's really good.
But no, he had surgery that night. And then 2 weeks later, he wanted to meet me. And I just said, look, let's just do this in a real private place. I don't want to do this in front of people, in front of the media. I mean, it's a very emotional thing. And so I met with he and his wife, and I mean, they had a good cry. I mean, we hugged and cried for an hour.
Unbelievable.
And then we've become good friends. And so, when he comes to Pittsburgh, I've taken him out to dinner. We've been out to dinner here with our wives, and it's nice. And so,
Unbelievable story.
he's a really well-respected member of this community.
Yeah.
Has a lot of friends. I mean, you saw him on the field today with the mayor and the council people and whatnot. So, he's a very nice man. And more importantly, Mike, what he's done is he's paid it forward.
That's awesome.
So he's become a CPR instructor. He goes around and gives classes. Wow. And right now, I think he's up to 200. He's had 200 automatic defibrillators that he has a foundation.
Wow.
That people donate to the foundation. He buys these defibrillators. He's giving them to schools, to cops, to fire departments. He gave 75 to the Pirate organization last year. So he's very excited about his philanthropy and what he's doing and paying it forward. And I give him a lot of credit. I mean, he backed up, he did what he said he would do. And I give him a lot of credit for that.
But how gratifying, Pat, for
That's
you, man.
so
You know what I mean? When all is
embarrassed,
no, get out of here. When all is said and done,
We get to brag.
We're talking about his home run, the walk-off home runs, all this great stuff. You've got to be sitting back. Of course, all the stuff you've done over your career as a surgeon, but this moment, you've got to be sitting back with a glass of wine at some point and say, like, dang.
Dang.
Well, let me tell you what I told my wife. Honey, I pushed the button. It worked.
Yeah, but man.
Somebody had to push the button.
And if it wasn't for God, he wouldn't be here because it wasn't Patrick. Right?
Is there a feeling you can describe when you start to see and feel a pulse? Like, holy smokes.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, this really worked.
Man.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't expect. And usually,
with a little bit higher blood pressure, of course.
Yeah, and usually when you shock somebody, it's usually doing it more than once, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the fact that we got to him so quick and he was right there, give our trainers credit too, because
They were all there on the scene, no
they
doubt.
had the equipment right there, and all the players were kind of lined up on one knee, and so it was kind of, I'm just glad it worked out for
well,
Ernie's family.
Wow.
I'm going to embarrass you too by the time we have left. The inaugural
Let's do it.
Bandman, Lupke, Patrick, DeMeo endowed chair. What's that like?
Yeah, I look, I was
Can
very,
you say that fast 3 or 4 times?
No, I can't. I can't.
Oh, man.
so
It's a lot of money. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
in the world of academic medicine, when somebody wants to give a gift, they call it an endowment, and they name it a chair.
Mhm.
It's not like my kids thought I was getting a
Yeah,
chair.
yeah.
To sit in.
A little bit bigger than that.
You're actually sitting in it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right,
yeah.
No, but it's so they call it a chair, and it's in recognition. And so what happens with that chair is that money that they donated, millions of dollars, will continue to grow over time, and the investments that it spin off will be dedicated to orthopedic research. And so long
cool.
after
In your
I'm
name,
retired
yeah.
and I'm gone, the chair stays in perpetuity.
Man,
And so for the
talk
next
about humbling,
chairman and
Pat,
the chairman after that, it is one of those things that I never expected.
yeah.
Right. And honestly, like I told you before, usually it happens after you're gone.
Well, it's pretty cool. You're able to see it.
Yeah,
Be a
I
part
love
of
that it happened while you were
Yeah.
still here,
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
can enjoy it.
yeah. So, but no, I'm not going anywhere for a while. So
I'll tell you, what an absolute treat, man. He is humble, but to see him in action, he's a special guy, man. And we're lucky to have him.
well, thanks you for
Very
having me
lucky.
here today.
Yeah.
On
Appreciate
Hold
you
My
pointing it
Cutter.
out. Yeah.
Hold my
Oh, and I
cutter.
got to tell you one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but when you were playing, you know what the girls used to call you? Mike McCotty. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, baby.
Wow.
All the young girls
Oh,
in
my
Pittsburgh,
God. No way.
Mike McCotty.
Is that right?
You
How
gotta-
about that?
You can't let them live that one down.
No, that's over.
Yeah.
In perpetuity.
I wasn't being very humble right there, by the way.
Thanks to
Appreciate
Pat
it.
DeMeo
All
on
right.
Hold My Cutter. We're going to do it again up in Pittsburgh at Rocky because he's got some good cigars for us too. So we'll do that on Hold My Cutter.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys.
So thank you.
Stay well.